Hey everybody, we're the Epistemologers here today, and our topic of the day is the authority of science. We've been having fun again, and as it always seems to happen, we get into an argument about authorities, because people really love their authorities. It's quite remarkable. I suppose that it's easy, or it feels easy, but obviously that, if you think about it for anything longer than a few seconds, you'll realize that it's really stupid because you end up getting conned.
You could probably think about it for far longer than a few seconds and still come to the same conclusion.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry.
But yeah, it just creates vulnerable subjects.
Right.
To the authority.
If you have a doctor that tell you that smoking's good, would you believe them? They're a doctor.
Yep, they're a doctor. They've got the creds.
They got the creds.
What can you do?
What are you gonna
do? This is what happened, right? Decades
Yeah.
ago, this is what happened.
That's exactly what happened in the 50s.
Doctors promoting cigarettes.
Yeah, shit. I mean, do you even believe the toothpaste when 4 out of 5 dentists agree that it's the best toothpaste on the market? Do you guys believe that shit? Like, who does? No one does.
All right. So, we could just make it very digestible. Basically, reliable sources of information don't actually exist. Knowledge authorities don't exist. And touchstones of truth don't exist. So,
there's no...
For instance...
You have to accept that there is no way to get to an objective truth. That you can be sure that is actually an objective truth. It might be an objective truth. It might be reality. But there's no way to verify that it is reality. There's no way to know that it is reality. And so you might...
I'd say you could approach it only through good explanation.
Right. And so you can only...
You get closer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can only
But your explanation could never be perfect. It could never be perfect.
No.
Because you always expect error.
Yes.
In your explanation. So your understanding of the facts could be flawed or could be worded better.
Right.
Your language could be improved.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So maybe you have this idea that's basically just not precise or something, but it has a large grain of truth to it. And so there's a lot of value to it. It just makes sense to improve it. To improve the language around it, to cut away some of the inaccuracies and
that's one of the,
at least as the situation demands it.
Well, and that's one of the things that we ran into was people were trying to say, oh, there's all this study. Oh, this person over here has all this brilliant stuff, right? And they expect that to be their argument. They don't try to form an argument themselves. They don't try to say, oh, this is my argument. No, they say, this over here, some expert over here has explained this in a way that I agree with. Which means they're not thinking for themselves. They're letting other people speak for them.
They're just going to defer you to them because they have the better explanation. But the thing is that if you can't take that explanation and make it your own, then you don't understand it.
Right.
And if you're not sharing explanations, then other people can't understand it.
And there's nothing wrong with not being able to properly explain something, right? If you have a poor understanding, there's nothing wrong with struggling with an explanation. That happens.
Well, I would say it's not a personal failure.
Yeah, it's not a personal.
It's not on you.
It's not on you
because we're all basically in that state at all times.
Yeah, we're all ignorant in some way or another, and so
in some way, yeah.
In some way, and so to not have a fully fleshed out understanding. Or a fully fleshed out explanation of what's happening means that you should probably find out more. If this is something that really interests you, find out more and be able to explain it better, right, to yourself. And so
yeah.
And so
if you have certain tests, you want to make sure your understanding is coherent, it makes sense, and then you want to make sure that it meets your expectations of what reality is,
right,
and what you're seeing. And then you want to make sure that if you're trying to accomplish something, you want to accomplish those goals. You want to make sure it gets you to where you want to be. And then you also want to make sure it's shareable and other people get the right impression. So all of these things are different constraints that you can judge your explanation on.
And if we were to accept that climate change is at like what all the experts say. They have succeeded in the science and maybe possibly the engineering, but they lack in giving people the right impression because they just sound like authoritarian assholes. And
well, there's a certain degree of elitism that comes across as well because we have this academia club
yeah,
that has set up a quote-unquote wall between themselves and everyone else. It's that ivory tower everyone talks about that academia is in, and basically it's to create distance between themselves and the ignorant masses. And in order for an ignorant person to approach the ivory tower, they have a trial, like an obstacle course, a series of vetting, and everyone has to sign off on them. All the people must accept them into their club, and this is a huge initiation ritual that takes many years and is not even guaranteed. You might not say what they expect you to say, and they boot you from the whole path up the ivory tower. So everyone really wants to get there, and once you're there, you're held in place by everyone else who want to make sure you're also saying the same things.
yeah,
They want to make sure all the ignorant masses are looking up to them.
and that the experts are all saying the same thing. This is the exact same bandwagon approach that advertisers used to try to trick people into buying shit, right? The 4 out of 5 dentists agree. It's the same paradigm.
Yeah.
Because there's money in tricking people into doing X, Y, or Z, right? One of my favorite quotes about climate change in particular was that the Green Revolution in the 2000s, in the early aughts, there was the Green Revolution, and everyone was going green with recycling and everything. Well, Thomas Friedman, the economist, had said that the Green Revolution was not a revolution, it was a party, because nobody got hurt. Companies weren't failing because they were making shit ton money hand over fist by selling some green product that was 50% more expensive.
We're looking at an industry transformation.
Yeah.
And this is done because organizers of industry are orchestrating it.
Yes. And so
now the reasons behind that are varied.
Yeah.
And open to debate.
Sure.
But that's what's happening. There's a transition from the so-called fossil fuels
right
to so-called renewable fuels or sustainable
whatever
industry practices. Yeah. And a lot of it centers on carbon, and they're trying to control it, manage that, put incentives on it.
Or tax it. And that's the other...
And so, of course, this is going to affect livelihoods.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm actually a proponent of worker mobility. I like the idea of sharing knowledge so that we can all kind of become a specialist right when the need for it arises. So you can flit from job to job to job to job, even if the economy is in flux, even if the industries are transforming and doing all of this. I'm a fan of people being able to adapt. So I'm not saying that's a bad thing, that livelihoods are in danger, but in that regard. But it does put pressure on people, and there will be pushback.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're finding a lot of these climate change proponents without arguments, without explanations.
Yeah.
They don't try. They just ridicule.
They're
derisive.
They're
elitist.
They rely on NASA and some other thing to try to make their arguments, but that means they don't have an argument. If I were to pull an random article from NASA, is that their argument?
Yeah, right.
What is their argument?
Well, maybe it is. I don't know. They probably don't understand it. They probably didn't read it themselves. Who knows?
No.
But they don't need to because it's settled.
Yes, it's settled science.
There's no reason to criticize it.
Yeah. And that's
basically just nonsense. And it's just nonsense.
That's such a dangerous thing. Settled science is so dangerous because you can't go anywhere from that. If it's settled that this thing it is, you can't question it because it's settled.
Yeah, there's no point of improvement. There's no opportunities. If you're not looking for errors because everything is settled, certain and correct, and it's only arguing about the margin of error or whatever, like the decimal points, right?
Yeah.
If you're only arguing about the degree of approximation or precision, then, it's not a big deal. Like, you can just squat and not really look into it at all. But these people come out with everything but good explanations. I'm finding, like, they pull out the book of tricks and leaf through the pages and start just throwing tricks from the book.
Yes.
I've listed out over 20 different tricks used in the process of just trying to hold a conversation with these people. And not one of them has been a good explanation, which is my only criterion.
Which, by the way,
it should be everyone's only criterion.
Which, by the way, stay tuned, because we're eventually going to go through that entire list and have a discussion about each one, because that sounds
at some point, yeah.
Because that sounds like fun. Check out our Misconception series on our channel. It's going to be great. It is already pretty. But
the one that comes out the most, I think, is the appeals to authority.
Yeah.
The argument from authority.
It's really
and
interesting.
It's like either they're.
It's really
Hold
interesting.
on a second. I want to break.
Okay, sorry.
We'll get there, but I want to break it down a little bit. There's 3 main types that I've recorded so far, and it's using a government agency's official statement or position on the matter and treat that as certain.
Yep.
Or individually, if they are scientists, they'll puff themselves up to seem important. They'll have like a really professional-looking photo of them, and
I have
and
PhD,
they list out their criteria, their credentials.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a PhD, and I'm super awesome. And then all of their content is trite, inane, like non-explanations, like they just drop in and derisively sneer at people, and that's about it. And then they have they demand trust merely because the person is an expert. So expertise is essentially allotted. It's what people are looking for in their worldview. Yeah. And so when they meet people who are not looking for that is us, there's a big clash.
Yeah, because we demand more than just some expert opinion. We want to know why we need to follow this. That's, we're not.
Yeah, of course. When I ask for it, they say, "Well, you're either too stupid to look it up yourself,
too lazy,
or too lazy, or something, or you can't understand it."
Yeah.
But I'm making a different point. My point is, if they personally understand it, they should be able to explain it.
Yes. And which in our idea is, if you're making the case for something, you should probably understand it.
Right. I mean, in climate science, the package of basics that they want the public to know is extremely digestible.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, it's very simple. And a lot of people have heard it.
Yeah.
So, carbon emissions, they're absorbing heat from the sun. They're creating a greenhouse effect.
Yep. And
there's a global warming effect that will occur and all that. But if you really look into the details, you'll see there isn't a consensus.
Yeah.
At all. We have 20 plus different models, climate models, and fortunately these ones happen to be fairly similar. But there are far more that are not similar that they don't want to draw attention to. And what are we supposed to do with that?
Well,
right? Like everyone has ideas.
And what are you going to do with the fact there's way more we can get into with just climate change, but I think we've sort of settled the topic of, or at least expanded on the topic of why using authority in this specific case is insane, and why we debate it so fiercely. It's not even that we would debate climate change. I'd love to get into that discussion with somebody, but
you can't even get to a productive conversation.
Yeah.
If we can't even get past the argument from authority.
Right.
We just disagree on that one point.
Yeah. And
we can't get anywhere.
And because apparently that's all their argument is some authority said this thing, and if you don't believe it.
Well, I've been told we have 12 years to really turn this ship around.
Yeah.
They'll say, we're teetering on the brink. We had doomsday prophets. Now they're wearing lab coats. And it's not just climate science. There's the superbug, the dreaded superbug.
Oh God.
There's the asteroid threat. Oh, watch for asteroids.
Africanized
all.
bees. Don't forget Africanized bees. The bees are coming.
Yeah,
the bees are coming.
Or whatever. You know, it's so we jump from threat to threat to threat, and my point, to be clear, is not that any of this is true or false. I'm not speaking to that. I don't care. You know, it doesn't. It's irrelevant.
Yeah.
My point is, explain it, because the truth is not self-explanatory.
You can't take a bunch of data points and say that means anything. I can say that those data points are all coincidental, and that's an explanation of what's going on. But that doesn't, that's just as valid a theory as a theory that says experts have said that these data points mean something.
And another thing, consensus is a bad sign because it's hiding the criticism.
Yeah.
There is debate, there is criticism, because we all have our own perspectives, our own views, and our own ideas. So consensus is more like a cover, like it's a veneer, and the consensus is there again to compel people to think a certain way, and it's again a way to hide the fact that errors are inevitable. You know, they worry because we're questioning where the planet is headed, but if it's so important, then make this digestible. Be an agent for promoting this idea. You don't be derisive. Don't just make empty claims or point to this study or that study or whatever. Actually understand it and explain what you understand. Share it. Spread it. Is that all?
I think that's it. I think that's it. Well,
all right, cool.
Do all the things that you do on normal YouTube channels, and catch you later.